particularly around these coke drums, it's pretty grimy. So, because obviously they try and keep the particulates down, but obviously when you're cutting up solid coke, you're going to get some dust and other things. And they do use water and stuff to try to keep the dust and stuff to a minimum. But there have been incidents where an operator running a unit like this will get into difficulties, and when you lose control of a coker, then things go downhill very quickly, because you get all these alarms, but the alarms don't really help you because the poor operator gets alarm overload. I mean, if something goes wrong and then he gets alarms left and right, the guy doesn't even have time to read the alarms before he needs to take some action. So these units are very carefully controlled, and there is a sequence. You can see that you can build a logic into a control system, but the operators do need to keep an eye on what's going on, and they do need to be aware, because it is possible to overfill the drums, and it has been done. And the other thing is that these drums go through a tremendous amount of thermal stress. Because if you think about it, these areas, I mean, you have a conical drum, you're going through 900 Fahrenheit all the way down to ambient, and you keep cycling it through day after day. You're putting coke in it, and it's a pretty tough service. So they don't last forever, but they, with the right materials, they do last for many decades. So if you take good care of them, they will function well. All right, now this is Resid upgrading the Foster Wheeler process. They're the licensor of this, and then there are other licenses. ConocoPhillips has a process, and this is fairly typical of the kind of processes that I've already shown. And again, it gives you an idea of the kind of products you're going to get. Now, downstream of the coker pot, we have what you can call a vapor recovery unit or a light ends recovery unit. And basically, if we drop back a couple of slides, here we go. See on the right-hand side, there's this reflux drum, and it says gas going over the top. Basically, you can process that gas into LPG and other types of streams. And that's what you do in the other part of the coker. Let's see. And this is the kind of thing that you would get. So the vapor feed is coming in here on the left-hand side. There's a light ends compressor, and you compress the light ends up, because basically the tower is operating a little bit above atmospheric, maybe 10 psi or somewhere in that sort of range. So you have to compress it, and then you go through an absorber stripper section. We have a sponge absorber. They call it a sponge because the oil acts as a sponge. It kind of soaks up the components that they want out of the gas. So it's called a sponge absorber. It's basically just a column. Now, then in this downstream section, we've got a debutanizer, C3C4 splitter, and an amine contactor. What we're basically trying to do here, we're producing the various gas streams. You can see a fuel gas, C3, propane, LPG, and then C4, LPG, and a naphtha stream. So you're basically making use of these coker gases that come off the coke drum. Because when you do a thermal cracking process, you get a whole range of stuff. Some of it's gasoline, but some of it's light material. Obviously, you want as much gasoline as possible, and you control the conditions to get as much gasoline as possible, but you're going to make these other things as well. So the coker is actually quite a complicated unit, because you've got this You got the 6 coke drums, you got the main fractionator, you got all this stuff going, light ends compressor. So there's plenty of stuff going on, and it's a challenging unit for the operators to run, but most of them run very well. All right, I touched on one thing. I mentioned that you get a whole range of products. Obviously, you need to get to the product that you want, and the product that we want is gasoline. So if you operate a coker and you make LPG, you crack it too much, then you're not going to get the gasoline that you're looking for. So you want to crack it enough, but not too much. So here, for example, we're comparing a cat cracker and the kind of things that you would get, and coking. You can see the kind of products you get: coker gasoline, light fuel oil, heavy fuel oil, and coke is 25%. So we get a lot of coke coming out of this thing. Worldwide coking capacity. Delayed cokers, you can see we've got a lot of delayed cokers in the United States. Fluid cokers, again, I mentioned the cost differential. You can see there are some fluid cokers and flexi cokers, but you can see the capacity there, the tons per day, is much, much less. And they basically, although they still do build fluid cokers and flexi cokers, but most companies would build a delayed coker for the cost differential. The fluid coker and flexi coker are licensed by ExxonMobil, so the chances are you'll only see them in either an ExxonMobil refinery or a refinery that used to be owned by Exxon or by Mobil. All right. Major coke producers in the U.S. Quite a few of these companies have been merged, or Chevron merged with Texaco, Exxon merged with Mobil, Shell is still Shell, Arco merged with Amoco and became BP America, and I guess, let's see, where did Unocal go? Well, Unocal, I think, went with, maybe with, I think they sold off several of their facilities. All right. And then Conoco, of course, merged with Phillips. All right. Now, getting back to our delayed coker diagram with our 2 cokers, 2 coke drums, the fractionator, and the furnace. Let's just do a little bit more here. All right. I mentioned removing the coke is quite hazardous, and the best approach, current approach today, is to use what they call delta valves, which are these big slide valves, rather than actually physically trying to remove the drum heads. And this is a picture of a delta valve, and these were installed down at Shell Wilmington. Wally Parsons did the work, and these were installed a few years ago. And most cokers now have at least some of these valves. You can see this delta guard thing there, and you can see the conical section of the coke drum up above there. Here they put the insulation back on. This one, the insulation is not actually there. The insulation has been put on. How big is it? Well, the conical section, goes up to roughly the 26 feet. So this thing across is probably sort of 15 feet, 10 to 15 feet across there. So it's a big thing. And then of course the one on the top is big as well. So you need one of these on the bottom of the coke drum, one of these on the top. And these pictures are not the greatest, but the bottom of the coke drum is kind of hidden away in the structure, so it's difficult to get really good light down there. But this gives you an idea of the size of the thing. But obviously, once you've installed these things, of course they cost money to install, but once you got them installed, then all you have to do is hit the button and they open and they close, and that's a big improvement on having to go and actually take the heads off. And it's a much quicker operation, because instead of needing maybe 30 minutes, maybe an hour to get these heads on and off, you just open and close the valve, and it's a relatively quick operation. So you can compress the cycle for more throughput. All right. Now, I think at this point we'll take another quick break for 15 minutes, and then we'll come back and then we'll talk about how we get the coke out.